Hello and welcome to a different background than you're used to, and probably a larger box than you're used to as well. Now this is a little bit of a different video, but essentially what I've done is I bought a Hackintosh on eBay, and we're gonna see if it's actually any good. It may come as a surprise, but as much as I love Macs, I've never actually built a Hackintosh. I've talked about it a lot, I've been meaning to do it for quite a while now, but I just haven't gotten around to actually getting down and dirty and building a Hackintosh. And I know personally from a number of friends who have built one that there is definitely an initial learning curve. And for that reason, for a lot of people, building a Hackintosh isn't really an option. You have to have a certain amount of technical ability to be able to pull it off, and for a certain number of people, it's probably just worth buying a Mac and spending a little bit extra to get that native macOS experience. But what if you could completely circumvent the challenges of building a Hackintosh by having someone else do it for you? And that's what I've done today. I bought this enormous box on eBay, and it is promised to be a pretty powerful Hackintosh. And we're gonna see if you can actually trust a random person on the internet to do it right. Now you may already have noticed from looking at the box, but this is no ordinary Hackintosh. Oh no, this one is a pyramid. Now I don't actually know a lot about the specs of this Hackintosh. I know it's a pyramid, obviously, that's why I bought it. How can you say no to the pyramid case? But other than that, I know that it has an RX 580, a Core i9-9900K, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1 terabyte SSD. That's all I know. I don't know what brand, I don't know if it's water-cooled or air-cooled. We're gonna find all of this out. So without any further ado, let's crack it open. Let's peer inside the pyramid. I'm sorry, that was cheesy. Well, wouldn't you know it, it's a pyramid. As you might expect, there's a lot of empty space because the pyramid is not a cube shape like the box is. We also have this rather nifty little cutout here to nestle the top of the pyramid in quite nicely. Looks like we also have the board for our Z390 motherboard. That's nice. We like to see that. This looks a lot bigger than the pictures. Okay. Oh man, where do I even grab this from? I don't even know how to get this thing out of here. Ugh! And there is the pyramid itself. And there it is. This is quite a funky looking PC. I don't think I've ever seen something that looks like this. This is cool. So I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting, but this thing is gigantic. It's really nice. We've got tempered glass side covers here, which allow us to see the inside of the machine. Cable management is really, really nice, by the way. We've also got this really sturdy metal superstructure. The only thing is the pyramid, it looks great, no doubt, but it's not exactly the most practical shape for a PC to be in, let's be perfectly honest. Looks like the cable management has been done pretty well. This seems like a very well put together computer. I'm not super convinced that that cooler is gonna be able to wrangle a 9900K under full load, so we're gonna have to investigate that. This definitely seems like a PC that would have done well with water cooling. I am noticing that we do have 2 open RAM slots, so it would be pretty easy to bring this thing up to 64 gigs, which is really nice. And I also noticed around the front here, we have what looks like a networking card. So that should allow us to use AirPlay and handoff and all that sort of stuff. It also looks like we've got an NVMe SSD under there, so that should be a 1 terabyte drive. Not bad. Now this pyramid set me back $2,600. Now for a Core i9, 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, and RX 580, that's definitely a little bit overpriced, but we do also have the pyramid design, and obviously a fair amount of work has gone into building the machine as well as putting macOS on it, at least That's what I hope is on this thing. I haven't actually booted it up yet. So it's definitely too early to judge whether this was a good value or not. So why don't we go ahead and set this thing up and get the pyramid up and running. I'll meet you back in the studio. Once we peel off the Pyramid's shell, we get a glimpse of the internals of the device. It's a pretty standard air-cooled build with mostly stock components, so we don't have fancy cables, extra RGB, or even a fully modular power supply. The cable management here is solid, but nothing particularly clever or exceptional. There are some really nifty choices that have been made here to optimize this build for Hackintosh. The first is the Z390 Designaire motherboard, which has two Thunderbolt 3 ports. There's also the Wi-Fi adapter, which allows this machine to make use of the very same Wi-Fi card found in a MacBook Pro, which enables handoff, iMessage, and AirDrop. These are key features of a real Mac that you often have to give up when working on a Hackintosh, and the best part is I didn't have to worry about setting up the kexts and drivers to get those up and running. Now before we hop into the benchmarks on this thing, let's do a full parts list and cost breakdown. So obviously the most notable thing is the case. The Ozza Pyramid costs $300. Then we have an i9 9900K paired with a Z390 Designaire motherboard, G.Skill Ripjaw's 32GB RAM, a Crucial MX500 1TB NVMe SSD, an EVGA 500W BQ80 Plus bronze power supply, Sapphire RX 580 8GB graphics card, a weird heatsink, we'll talk more about that later, and the Wi-Fi card. So the total cost for all of the parts in this machine as they are today on Amazon and Newegg is $1,664. Now, I paid $2,690 for this thing on eBay, which means after fees, the seller probably made about $700 profit, which is a tidy sum. So I paid about $1,000 over the market value if you were to just build this PC on your own. So the big question is, was it worth the premium? Well, let's not forget that we're not just paying for the parts here. As with any pre-built computer, you're paying for someone to assemble these components, and in this case, we're also paying for someone to Hackintosh the system for us, which is not something that I've done before and would probably have taken a good bit of work for a first-timer such as myself. To give us some perspective, why don't we compare the Pyramid to an actual Mac with similar specs? Fortunately for us, the Pyramid is almost exactly mirroring the 2019 5K iMac, which is a lot more expensive. If you spec out a 2019 iMac from Apple, you're looking at a staggering $3,600. Though nobody should pay Apple for RAM upgrades, so realistically it's more like $3,150. So given that we paid a substantial amount more than the market value for the parts, but also a substantial amount less than an iMac, how does this thing stack up in terms of performance? In Cinebench R20, we saw a somewhat confounding result. The i9 iMac scores 4,096 on average, and the Pyramid scores, well, on its first run, we get an impressive 4,591. But on average, it actually scores 3,924. So how did this happen? Well, it may come as a surprise given that the iMac has a single cooling fan for the entire system, but the cooling in the Pyramid is actually what's holding us back here. If we open up Intel Power Gadget, as soon as Cinebench starts, the temperatures skyrocket to 100 degrees Celsius almost immediately. The i9 tries to boost itself up to 5 GHz and starts sucking in almost 160 watts of power, but almost immediately it has to pull back as the temperatures go up so much. As the test continues, the power draw and clock speeds plummet. I've only seen thermal performance this bad from a MacBook Air, which doesn't even have a proper heat pipe. The problem, as it turns out, is exactly what I thought when we unboxed the Pyramid. This cooler is absolute garbage. It barely does anything to keep the 9900K under control, and quite frankly, I'm puzzled by why they chose to cheap out here specifically. This thing has a Core i9, a high-quality motherboard with VRM cooling and Thunderbolt. The case alone is $300, so why did they not just get a Be Quiet Dark Rock 4 at the very least? They'd still have had plenty of room for profit. Upon further inspection, I actually found this heatsink on Alibaba for under $10. It's an extremely basic stamped fin cooler with no heat pipes and very low fin density. You can even see inside it from the sides. It boggles my mind that they went for such a woefully inept cooling solution on an otherwise pretty solid build. Another area where performance is slightly disappointing is the SSD. We're only getting about 400 to 500 megabytes per second read-write here, whereas Apple's SSDs are well in the 2 to 3 gigabyte per second range. Graphics, on the other hand, are definitely an advantage on the Pyramid. In Unigine Heaven on the Extreme preset, we score 1,387 on average. This is notably more than the 1100 an iMac with Radeon Pro 580X graphics will get, even though that's using the same basic GPU as an RX 580. Overall, I'm conflicted about this Hackintosh. On one hand, we do see evidence of attention to detail and trying to get all of the major features you would want from a Mac. Thunderbolt 3 and continuity are here, and that's great, but there are clear oversights like that horrific cooling fan and really slow SSD. Heck, I'm not convinced that the 500-watt power supply was the best move here either. And to be honest, at $2,600, I don't think this is the best value. Don't get me wrong, compared to an iMac, we could fix this thing up with a better cooler, faster storage, and even bump up to 64 gigabytes of RAM, and we would still be saving a little bit of cash. But the whole point of buying a Hackintosh is to save a ton of money, get better performance, and have better upgradability. And I'm just not sure this does all three of those well enough. The point of building a Hackintosh is to get the same or better performance than a Mac at a vastly lower price. Now, market value, this thing is about $1,600, maybe $1,700 if you put a better heatsink on it, whereas the 5K iMac with similar performance is over $3,000. That's a huge cost savings, but that's not the full story. With an iMac, you're not just buying a box full of parts, you're buying the all-in-one design, you're buying a 5K display, the mouse and the keyboard, legitimate macOS support with updates and a warranty, the ability to add Apple Care. With the Hackintosh, even one that's as fully featured as this one that has Thunderbolt 3 and continuity, you still are going to have some drawbacks. Every time you want to update this thing, it's going to take a little bit more maintenance than just clicking update. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that you should overpay for the components you get in a Mac. There's definitely arguments to be made for either one, but in this specific case, I don't think this is enough of a cost saving to justify the extra hassle of dealing with a Hackintosh. Also, on a completely separate note, can we just acknowledge for a moment how ridiculous and absurd the Pyramid case is? I won't lie, it's quite aesthetically pleasing and it looks really cool, but it is not practical. For one, it's gigantic and it's really, really heavy, and there's no dust filters of any sort, so it's gonna get dusty really, really easily, and you can literally just stick your hands in it. It's just a mess waiting to happen. I love you, Pyramid case, but you are ridiculous. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your take on the Pyramid Hackintosh in the comments below. As usual, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at LukeMiani and check out my subreddit in the description below. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.